How's it going, everyone? Welcome back to the Next Goal Wins TV, and today we're going to try and break down that Arsenal versus Manchester United FA Cup match that ended in an upset win for Manchester United. I keep making these tactical breakdowns, and the truth is that at the bottom of it all, the reason why one team beats another has less to do with the tactics and more to just do with individual performances. Nonetheless, we're going to try and break it down and see where it went wrong for Arsenal. Straight away, I noticed that Arsenal try to build up a little bit differently than they usually do. As soon as the ball typically goes to a center back or the goalkeeper, one of the fullbacks plays inverted, and Arsenal build in a back three with two holding mids, one of them being the inverted fullback, which typically allows Odegaard to push up a little bit higher. Today, what I noticed is that Arsenal, for the most part, kept their fullbacks out wide, but just a little bit closer to the center backs, almost in a similar fashion to the way that Liverpool build out, and instead, they would bring Martin Odegaard to come and help them, connect the play, and get the ball higher up. There was even times where he would pop out a little bit wider, or even drop into that middle of the back line. There was also a good bit of rotation with players like Martinelli coming inside and Lewis Skelly pushing up higher and wider, and towards the beginning I think Manchester United had a hard time preventing Martin from getting the ball, as they weren't really sure how to deal with that setup. And I think in the long term this is probably a really good way for Arsenal to move the ball up the field, just because it gets their most technically talented player on the ball earlier, and he was absolutely brilliant with some of his passes out of the back. A little later in the first half, Manchester United started to figure out that they needed to cut off the passing lane to Odegaard as they went and they pressed, and it made it just a little bit more difficult for Arsenal to get the ball up the field. Manchester United also had some good spells of possession, and I think they're starting to be a lot more comfortable on the ball within Ruben Amorim's system, and they've done a good job of balancing when they need to counterattack, especially against a team like Arsenal who pushes up so high, and when they just need to put their foot on the ball and try and build out. And with the 3-4-2-1, the wing-backs are usually the outlets for United, and they did a good job to find Mazraoui specifically when they broke Arsenal's pressure. However, Arsenal usually press pretty well, with Martin Odegaard being the one that starts the press, and there was a couple of times where Manchester United were forced into giveaways because the Arsenal front line did a good job of cutting off the passing lanes for any of the Manchester United players in the midfield and out wide. I think the first half was much more of a feeling out process, and the real action all started in the second half. Manchester United capitalizing off of a counterattack after a mistake from Gabriel, and as I said in the beginning, individual performances are the reason that United won the match. Bruno Fernandes and his fantastic strike gave them the lead, and the way that he had to hit it, it was just so difficult that I think the majority of players in the Premier League would have missed that. It's bouncing up, there's players in front of him, he somehow manages to hit it perfectly and score the 1-0 for United. The game changed shortly after when Diogo Dalot got his second yellow, with Arsenal just scoring just a few minutes later, and I'm going to be completely honest, Bayindir's performance up until that part was not great. It was a poor punch from him that led to the first goal, and if we look at the save that he made off of a Declan Rice header later, you can see that it was more of a camera save than anything else, because he reaches over it with his right hand when he probably could have saved it easier with his left. Also, with some shaky bits with his feet earlier in the game, he just seemed to me like he was making things a little bit difficult for himself. But to be fair, he does make a big save against Odegaard to keep the game level after a call that should have never been a penalty, and then another one in the penalty shootout to win the game for United. And if we're going to talk about individual performances, we also have to mention that Kai Havertz had a very poor game in front of goal, and a legitimate world-class striker scores at least one of the opportunities that he had to win the game before the penalty shootout. And of course, he's the one that misses the penalty in the shootout as well, and that was a proper save by Banter. But besides him, the rest of the front line looked dull, and I think Martinelli's no longer at the level that Arsenal need him to be if they want to challenge for a title. Gabriel Jesus got injured with what seems to be like a long-term injury, and both Trossard and Raheem Sterling did not do enough to help Arsenal. If we go back to Manchester United once again, I think Højlund's time is running out, as he only has 0.18 goals per 90 minutes and ranks extremely low when compared to other center forwards in a lot of similar categories. I'd be very surprised if Xerxes isn't the starter moving forward for United, because I think he's had some brilliant performances after he was subbed off at that game against Newcastle. In my pre-match preview, I talked about Arsenal's poor attacking form recently and how Manchester United's positive performance against Liverpool could really even the playing field for today's match, and I think I was spot on with that prediction. Manchester United suffered and were forced to defend in a 5-3-1 for a long time, but they frustrated Arsenal enough and did a really good job with time management to get themselves to penalties. I think overall this signals a huge issue for Arsenal, that if they don't spend big and sell some of their players in this window, they could fall behind in the Premier League and lose all of the momentum that they've been building over the last 3 years. Manchester United, on the other hand, figured out some of the defensive issues, and now they just need to figure out Ruben's system in possession a little bit better. Finally, I just want to make it clear that Arsenal were the better team, and everyone has known that for quite some time. But Manchester United progressed to the next round, and that's all that matters for United. Another good result like this also buys them a little bit more time to learn Amorim's system, and now it puts Arteta in a tough spot because they're out of the FA Cup, they're down 2-0 to Newcastle in the EFL Cup after the first leg, and their opportunities for trophies are starting to die out. The only positive that they can get from this is that they have one less competition to play in, which means more rest and less injuries for their players. Let me me know what you guys think. I'd appreciate it if you like this tactical analysis to subscribe to the channel so we can keep uploading more videos like this one. See you guys in the next one.